Welcome to the Mischief Maker broadcast, where chaos, creativity, and common sense collide. Your host, Joel Freeman, was kicked out of high school in Alberta, Canada. He left home at 17 and hitchhiked around North America as a long-haired hippie and dope-smoking fool. He made a 180-degree change, becoming one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA. As a professional speaker, Joel has traveled to well over 55 countries. His many books have been published in 28 foreign translations. Pieces from his Black History collection have been seen by millions at the United Nations and many other venues. And now, the Chief Mischief Maker himself, Dr. Joel A. Freeman.
Hey guys, Baby Joel here. I told my sister, don't be upset if someone calls you fat. You're bigger than that.
Hey. That's the way we go. You're getting a little taste of what goes on behind the scenes here. I got one of these fancy cameras that just starts moving. I'm supposed to do this to halt it, but that's the way we do things around here. It's called the Mischief Maker Show. And guess what? I've got a Mischief Maker camera. It keeps playing tricks on me. Anyway, yes, Baby Joel strikes again. Maybe next week we'll have Teenager Joel or bigger Baby Joel, but I always enjoy hearing from him, however old he is. So today, if you're live, it's tonight, or I don't know where you are in the world. It might be in the morning, middle of night. But we have a great show. We have Bruce K. Rosenblum with us. He is he's a media research executive, a industry thought leader, an educator. He's a 4-decade veteran of the entertainment industry, many of those years with Warner Brothers. He's a researcher's researcher, an analyst. And, we named some of the shows. I wrote some of them down here, but we have shows like, I don't know if you ever heard of ALF. Hey, I'm not going to do my ALF impression, but I'll do it off air. Big Bang, Friends, TMZ, Extra, People's Court. Let's see, Solid Gold, Entertainment Tonight. He's had parts of all of these shows, Taxi, Mork and Mindy, in terms of the analytics, the analysis of how it connects with the audience. So we are going to talk about some fascinating stuff, and also the president of Warner Brothers at the time. And we're going to unpack this is Bruce Rosenblum also. So we got Bruce Rosenblum squared, and he's going to unpack that for us. But by the way, up above you see a QR code. That's designed for you to go to find out what a mischief maker is. There's a definition of a mischief maker. And then also there's a link tree of all the kinds of different things that we connect with. Our sponsor, the Rosetta Universe. I've got some swag on about Jack Johnson, the Rosetta Universe here on my shirt, and then we also are going to be if you're watching it live, you know who you are. If you're not watching it live, you know who you are too. But if you're watching it live, write in your questions for Bruce, and he will knock it out of the park for you. It's going to be a great show. So you probably know I'm a songwriter. I'm going to be releasing my album very soon, and it's called Mischief Maker. This is the name of the show, and it's also a song. We could call it the show song or something. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it. It's called Mischief Maker. The Mischief Maker attitude. It's where the blues and Frank Sinatra connect. And so, Mel, let's hear that song, The Mischief Maker.
In a world where the questions were few, rose up creatives who saw something new. While others stayed silent, they boldly spoke, breaking the tension with humor and hope. Just a bit crazy, that might be the prize. Boring routine is where wonder dies. Value the mischief maker's latitude. cheerful tune, strange yet wise, misunderstood. That's the Mischief Maker attitude. When problems come dressed in tradition's disguise, meet it head on with curious eyes. Not for the title, not for the fame. Discover solutions, not someone to blame. See every setback as part of a game. Examine dumb rules without any shame. In crowded spaces or corners alone, new voices are welcomed like seeds freshly sown. Trust isn't earned, it's freely shared, but gaslighting frauds are rarely spared. Each conversation a door swung wide, plenty of fun on the curious side. Value the Mischief Maker's latitude, arms open wide, all gratitude. Asking what if in the quiet room. Listen for the music, a cheerful tune, strange yet wise, misunderstood. That's the Mischief Maker attitude. Some say be quiet, some roll their eyes, but Mischief Makers refuse to compromise. They stir up the waters others have ignored, turn broken systems into something restored. Not rebels in name, but rethinkers by trade, builders of paths where no maps were laid. I'm not an expert, not trying to be, but I'm a student of all I see. So here's your invite, plain and clear. Bring your quirks, your questions, your cheer. The world gets better when we intrude with the Mischief Maker attitude. Value the Mischief Maker's latitude, arms open wide, all gratitude. Asking what if in the quiet room. Listen for the music, a cheerful tune, strange yet wise, misunderstood. That's the Mischief Maker attitude.
I'll tell you what, I love that song. And those lyrics came out of the whole idea of developing the show and then thinking of a song that could be, part of the show in some way and could kind of capture the vibe of the show. And I hope you enjoyed it. But we have, without any further ado, Bruce K. Rosenblum, come on in. Let's do this thing.
Joel. Thank you. It's an honor to be with you tonight.
Oh, it's great to see you. We connected through Adrian Branch, where you were looking, I guess you're a collector and you wanted something from Adrian, and I was kind of the conduit because Adrian's a friend. That's how we connected.
Right.
And it's pretty amazing. Here we are.
I mean, who knew? Adrian has turned into a terrific friend.
Yes.
He is quite the supporter. I think what he's done with his life and the goals that he's trying to achieve are amazing. He's an amazing person.
He is.
And I guess fate would have it. I mean, I needed one signature to finish a Lakers project, and he was it. And I didn't know where to begin to get to him. And then I found your name. And it said, if you need Adrian Branch, send me an email, which I did. And then next thing I know, Adrian called me, and we were on the phone for a half an hour. And it was like catching up with an old friend that we hadn't done in years.
That's the way AB is, yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Incredible. Now, there's a lot what I affectionately call resume obituary type stuff that has happened in your life. You've worked with Lorimer Pictures, Paramount, let's see, Telepicture Corporation.
Mhm.
You've served as executive VP for media research for Warner Brothers, Time Warner now, and a lot of awards, a lot of accolades. But take us back before we start talking about that, all that wonderful, wonderful things that all the wonderful things you've achieved. Take us back to your childhood in Brooklyn and your parents, your siblings, being born on the big day when the Dodgers won. You know?
Well, it's a day that the Dodgers won, but not the year. But I'll tell you, I was born on October 4th, 1954. On my first birthday, October 4th, 1955, the Brooklyn Dodgers won their first ever World Series championship. And my life changed from that. I mean, my dad was a diehard Brooklyn Dodger fan. He was, I had the hat and the glove and everything in the crib. I was going to be the next big Brooklyn Dodger star. And baseball consumed us. But going back a little further, I was born actually in Elizabeth, New Jersey. My mother was from an Orthodox Jewish family whose parents immigrated from Europe. And my dad was born in Brooklyn, and his parents were born in this country. My grandparents before were born in Europe. My dad wasn't religious at all. My mother was extremely religious. So there was a lot of things going back and forth. I had a sister who was born when I was 3, and she passed away when I was 6. She became ill and literally became ill and passed away. And to this day, the family has no idea what really caused what happened. I've been lucky enough to reach out to certain doctors back east who pulled the medical records, but they're vague and don't really explain anything. And that turned my family's world upside down. So it's like 1960, November of 1960, that happened. And my mother became a wreck. My father became a wreck. My mother became very anxious and very depressed, and that lasted her whole life. My father kept a lot of it in, and when he let it out, it could be very volatile, and you never knew what to expect. So it was like walking a tightrope. My grandparents had made the move from New Jersey. My grandfather ran a little delicatessen in Linden, New Jersey, and relatives who had made the move to California said, "You should come out to California. There's business opportunities." So they went, and then after my sister passed, they encouraged my family to sell the home and come to California for a fresh start. So we did.
And how old are you? 6 at this time?
I was 6 so by the time we moved to California, I was 7. And it was tough because I had a lot of friends in my neighborhood, and all of a sudden one morning we're moving, and I'm looking out the back window of the car and waving goodbye to everybody, going to California in a new neighborhood, in a new school, and not knowing anything. And I was kind of an introvert. I mean, I was just very self-conscious and very kind of scared to go into this new environment. As things would have it, my dad came home one night with a baseball glove and said, "Here's a baseball glove," and encouraged baseball and sports. And I started playing street ball with the kids in the neighborhood, and I got pretty good at it. And that gave me entree into a lot of school functions and after school activities basically through softball. I became a really good softball player, and that was kind of something I wanted to do. And then and from there I wanted to play Little League. But coming from an Orthodox Jewish family, I couldn't do Little League because my religious studies came first. In fact, they became first until I was 13 years old. I had to wait from the time I was 7. I had to wait 6 years till I had a bar mitzvah. And then the day after my bar mitzvah, the whole world changed because now those ties were broken. And my dad, the day after my bar mitzvah, ran over to the Little League field and signed me up. And so I started playing regular baseball at 14 and 15. And I found I was actually pretty good. I made all-star teams.
What position?
I played first base, left-handed. I wanted to be a pitcher, but when I got on the mound, I was afraid of hitting a batter. And so every time I pitched, I would walk 20 guys, but then they'd pull me out and they'd say, you're left-handed. Oh, well, the other position you can play is the outfield or first base. So why don't you play first base? So I played first base, and I really enjoyed that position and practiced hard at it and got pretty good. And 2 years later, I'm in high school, and I made our high school team, and there was a teacher strike. So the baseball season was canceled in LA City. So the next year came back. This was now 1971, and I made the varsity team, and there was a number of guys playing first base. I was a really good fielder, and my hitting was okay, but I earned the starting job and was taken out of the lineup after a few games because my hitting was weak, but my defense was fine, but my hitting was weak. And so the season went on, and our team went undefeated in 1971 through the regular season.
Goodness. You're a junior in high school now, right?
I'm a junior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're undefeated. We're going into the city playoffs, and the guy who replaced me at first base bends down to field a ground ball, and he can't get up. He can't get up. He hurt it. He did something to his back, and they insert me into the game. And I kid you not, this is the craziest thing ever. My adrenaline was pumping, and I get into this game, and we were playing at this place called the Balboa Sepulveda Sports Center. It's a big park, and there's 4 fields in each corner of the park, and all the playoff games were going on at the same time. And I remember I get in the game, and I get up to the plate, and I hit this ball, and it goes 500 feet. In fact, it goes all the way to the opposite diamond in the corner. I could run around the bases 3 times.
Next zip code.
But no, you know what I do? I get so excited that my feet go out from under me, and I do a face plant in second base. And I'm like, oh my God. I hit the farthest ball anybody's ever seen in the playoffs. And here I am with my face in the dirt at second base.
Oh, my goodness.
Run. So I get up at second base and I run to third. And the same thing happens. By the time I get to third base, I do a face plant into the ground.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, I end up with a triple. And
my goodness.
I ended up with a triple. It should have been a home run 5 times over. Anyway, so the next guy gets up and hits me in, and I get this standing ovation, and I just, my coach is looking at me going like, you're like the biggest idiot in the world. And I was like, oh my God, there was a place I could hide, I would hide. And my kids to this day, they never, every time we pass the Sepulveda Sports Center, they go, oh, that's the field that you fell down.
That's the field right there.
Yeah, you don't have to remind me of it. So,
face plant Bruce, right?
so we make it all to the city finals. And now I'm the starting first baseman in the city final in Dodger Stadium, and we're playing against Freeman High School, a high school.
That's heady stuff.
They've turned out so many professional baseball players over the years. Bobby Tolan, Willie Crawford, all these great players. And they had a shortstop by the name of Chet Lemon who made it to the major leagues and just recently passed away. But he played for the White Sox and the Tigers. A great baseball player.
I remember that name, yeah.
And so I get up. We play, and our pitcher pitched a beautiful game. It was 0-0 in the 3rd inning, and I was batting 7th, and I lit off the inning. And I'm channeling now. I'm channeling my first base idol, Wes Parker. I had his locker at the stadium. I'm playing first base. My number's 28, Wes Parker's number.
Jeez.
And I'm channeling Wes Parker, and I'm fouling off pitches. I got like a 10-pitch at bat, and then I hit a line shot to right field. I get a base hit. And then the number 8 hitter bunts me to second. The number 9 hitter bunts me to third, and our leadoff hitter comes up and gets a hit, and I score the only run of the game. We win 1-0.
Wow.
And then my career was set, man. I was like on top of the world. My best friend was on the team. We were like, we're going to get drafted. And we had this bet, I'm going to get drafted before you. No, you're going to get drafted for me. But senior season, I hit almost 400, won a Golden Glove Award, made all.
My goodness.
And I'm thinking, man, I can't miss. Professional baseball is my career. You know what? Didn't happen. I lost the bet. Lost the bet. Went to a junior college. Had a really, really nice year. I played for Coach Mike Gillespie, who's in the College Baseball Hall of Fame. He's one of the only guys that played on a national championship team as a player at USC, and then ultimately ended up coaching a national championship team at USC. And he was a wonderful coach and taught me a lot of things, as did my high school coach. Which, when my baseball career came to a screeching halt, when I transferred from this junior college I went to Cal State Northridge, all those lessons that they taught me helped me get through life. Because at that point, I mean, I had a tryout with the Reds after my career, went down the tubes. I knew it was going south because when I transferred out of the junior college to Cal State Northridge, the talent level was so rich. The guy I was competing against was Jason Thompson. He became the first baseman at Northridge, and then ultimately played for the Pirates and the Tigers and the Angels. Had a long, successful career in the major leagues. And when you go up against that, and you realize that your talent level isn't quite right, you realize it's time to figure out what else you want to do with your life. So I had a tryout with the Cincinnati Reds, and they said, "Nice tryout. If we can send you to Iowa and give you $5,000 and pack your bags." And my dad said, "No, you're going back to school." And that was a really great choice. I settled in. My major was political science. I loved politics. I loved law. And I won an internship it was called the Sacramento semester. And I was one of 2 students chosen to go to Sacramento State University, intern at the Capitol, and then take some classes. And I did that. And I really enjoyed it. And then I stayed on I worked for a state senator, and I stayed on his staff after I graduated college, and ended up working at a council that he created called the California Motion Picture Development Council. And it was a state agency that issued permits for production companies to shoot on state land. It was a really clever idea because they were just, getting permits to shoot, and this agency was able to create revenue for the state by charging them fees for license. And so I would go out to the MASH set out in Malibu Creek State Park, and I saw some wonderful productions and would map out areas where production companies could shoot. And I wrote articles about the skunk train up in Mendocino County and places that they could shoot up there. And I was enjoying myself. But the senator got himself in a little trouble. Some things never change with politicians, and it was pretty nasty. And so I decided to leave the council. I walked down the street. My uncle was working at a company called the ASI Market Research. The building was called the Preview House Building, and they were the premier testing center for TV movies and motion pictures and TV shows. They would test all the pilots, and they would recruit audiences into a theater, and people would be on dials, and they would rate the shows that they saw, along with advertising that would be placed in these shows, because there was advertisers who wanted to know how their commercials played in various shows. And then they would administer questionnaires and do focus groups. And I really enjoyed that. My main job was just processing all the data that came through, and it was really by hand and working with numbers, and I kind of enjoyed it. And then what made it even more interesting is that the guy who headed up the entertainment division at ASI needed someone to kind of like do client duty at night. So basically hold the hands of the producers and the directors that would come and test their product. And, and I would be there. I'd get, after the workday ended, and I would go to the show at night, and I would hold hands with all these heads of research and marketing at all the studios and production companies and the networks. And I decided that would be a lot of fun to be on the other side and be the guy whose rear end they kiss when they go to test the research, right? And so I started sending out resumes, and I got a call from Paramount Pictures. And the guy called me in, and I went on my interview, and he said, I really like your resume, and I really like the fact that, you're working with numbers, and this is an entry-level research job. He said, my decision is a tough one because it's you and there's another person that I'm considering. He said, but I noticed on your resume, you played baseball in high school and college. Were you any good? And I said, well, yeah, it was really good. I mean, I won the city championship. I got, was All City. I was honorable mention in my first year in college in the conference, honorable mention at first base. He said, well, if we hire you, will you play on our softball team? We have a very competitive softball team here at Paramount. And I said, when do I start?
That's hilarious.
Absolutely, I'll play. So the guy says, well, our first game is this coming weekend. I haven't even started my job. And it's just come out to Encino Little League. We got the big field, and it's a big game. We got Frank Yablans is the head of Paramount's Motion Picture Group, and he's got a bet with Guy McElwain, who is head of Creative Artists Agency. They got like a $10,000 bet going on who's going to win. And, and it's a big deal. Meanwhile, I show up to the field, and everybody's going like, who's this guy and why is he here? And my boss says, no, I just hired him and he works for us and he's a really good baseball player. And they said, well, how do we know he can do anything? So try him out. So they start pitching me softballs and I'm hitting these things out of the park. Well, Henry Winkler was our pitcher. We had Aaron Russo, who produced The Rose and Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. He was the catcher. And we had all the writers from the different Paramount shows at different positions, the heads of all the creatives were all, and they go, well, what position he's going to play? And Yablans says, anywhere he wants. I went, okay. So they put me in the outfield. They bat me fourth. The first inning I come up and we got bases loaded. And McElwain's the pitcher and he's throwing me pitches and I'm taking them. And he finally stops and he looks at me and he says, hit the effing ball. And I said, well, throw me an effing strike. I'm not going to take that from this guy. The next pitch he throws, and my friend Mike, who was the guy that recommended me to Paramount, was sitting in the stands, and he said, the ball that you hit is still in the orbit to this day. I was like 5 for 5. I had like 10 RBIs. We won the game.
That's crazy.
Paid off the bet.
Bruce, nothing's wasted, is it?
No, and what I understood was the power of networking, because that Monday when I actually showed up for my first day of work, when I came back from running the ratings around the lot, they said, well, where have you been? I said, well, I'm giving batting lessons to all these guys. Gary Diller was the chairman of Paramount at the time. Michael Eisner was the president of the studio. You had Gary Nardino, who was a big-time agent, was president of the TV group, and he was putting on Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley. He had all the top shows in the country on were all Paramount shows. And here's this little guy, and Gary Nardino took me under his wing, and I used to come on Saturdays, and I would call him. He would fly home to Connecticut on the weekends. Tough job being at the studio 4 days a week and home on the weekends. And I'd have to call him with the numbers for Here's Boomer, a little dog show that he was interested in, because A.C. Lyles, who was President Reagan's closest friend, was a producer on the lot. And he would call A.C. Lyles to tell him how the show was doing every week. And I just got ingrained, and I learned about networking. And then I just started to learn. And then what I found was, in order to succeed, because I had nobody really training me, I was sitting in this office and I was reading through files. In order to succeed, I had to employ my baseball skills that I had learned in high school and college from my coaches about teamwork, about preparation, about being buttoned up, about being able to deliver under pressure, and all those things came into play. And now, so I'm trying to take my winning attitude that I learned in sports and all these skills that I learned in sports, and I'm realizing, my God, my coaches weren't teaching me; they weren't yelling at me about all these different things that I was getting yelled at for in school. I was being taught life lessons because they knew that I was probably never going to be a professional baseball player, but they knew that I would probably be in business one day, either employed by somebody else or by myself. I'd probably get married and have kids, and I would need to understand all these principles to help guide me to be successful. I mean, we weren't a great team in high school, but we were fundamentally sound because we practiced we communicated. We knew where the ball was going to go before it was hit to us. We had that preparation, and we always stayed cool, calm, and collected under pressure. And all those things that I learned, I applied in my job at Paramount. And so when it was a great time to be able to start to employ that, because the industry was changing. It was a paradigm change in the industry with what they call the prime access and financial syndication rules. The networks and local stations weren't allowed to do certain things. So programming.
We have to take a break for a sponsor, but I want to come back and kind of hitchhike off where you're going with this.
Okay.
I want you to talk about the syndicator indicator, the emotional bond index
Absolutely.
with shows. And so I'm going to tease that right now. And Mel, let's go to the Rosetta Universe and see what that's all about.
Got it.
Hi, I'm Joel Freeman, the founder of the Rosetta Universe. Join us in transforming this ancient artifact, the Rosetta Stone, into a modern metaphor for critical thinking and problem solving. Young people today are overwhelmed by information, but most do not have a roadmap for the practical use of that knowledge. By turning thinking into a simple 7-step Rosetta process, we are making it feel doable rather than intimidating. It shifts the focus from being smart to being disciplined, which is a game changer for many students who struggle. Our reach is for the following grade bands: K2, 3-5, 6-8, 9-12, college, and beyond. Give me a call with any wisdom and advice. Here's my personal cell, 410-991-9718. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, the Rosetta Universe is it's transforming the ancient artifact, the Rosetta Stone, into a modern metaphor for problem solving. You know, my wife and I have 4 kids. We have 3 grandkids. And one of the biggest things is I want our grandkids, especially, to use their God-given brains before, during, and after engaging technology. And so that's what this is all about, using the epic drama of the Rosetta Stone that hardly anyone knows about: Napoleon, war, hieroglyphics, cracking codes, ancient Egyptian secrets. And then once people come through that gateway of this grand narrative, then introducing to the whole idea of problem solving and critical thinking skills. And I've taken the word Rosetta, and I've developed 7 steps for solving pretty much any problem in about 8 to 10 categories of problems. And it's like building a blockbuster movie. We're developing a 5,000 square foot traveling exhibit that'll travel all around North America for 7 years. And we'll reach out in each location, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, LA, wherever it is, to about 30 miles around, to all the colleges, universities, K through 12, all schools, all in that area, and draw them in to reach the kids tactically with this particular message. Also, I've designed a belt. This is the Jack Johnson belt. And I've had Sugar Ray Leonard and Sugar Shane Mosley, all kinds of different folks take a look at this belt and say it's the most beautiful belt they've ever seen. And we're only making 700 of these. This belongs in your man cave. And only 700 worldwide, all hand-numbered, hand-designed, and there'll be tremendous collector items. But go to rosettauniverse.com, click on the first link tree, and it'll show you how you can order this belt. It's actually donation. It's an incentive gift. And then every penny goes toward the foundation work. Anyway, enough of that. I want to turn a gentle corner and come back to Bruce. Bruce, I'm just mesmerized by your story. And we're taking this turn into what you did for, 4 decades or so in the entertainment industry. And I'd like for us to talk about syndication. I know a show at that time had to have 5 years in, and then it could be syndicated, and all these marketplaces. And then the syndicator indicator, the emotional bond index. Those are some things that you helped to generate and create. You had about 30 people working for you. If you could kind of jump in there and just tell us that story.
Well, like I said, when I started at Paramount, the paradigm for distribution started to change, and research became a very important part of the distribution process. In fact, as a result of what happened at Paramount, with them leading the way in creating what they call Monday through Friday strip first-run programming, shows like Entertainment Tonight. And then ultimately, when I went to Telepictures, shows like The People's Court and Love Connection, shows that aired 5 days a week in this prime access time period, because the rules, the prime access and financial syndication rules prohibited networks from airing off-network or programs. So when shows came off the network, they would be licensed into syndication. The networks couldn't air the MASHs in the top 100 markets, the big sitcoms. So they were mandated to create original programming for the good of the audience. Mm-hmm. Rather than doing news type programs, which we think the FCC meant. They started taking the easy way out and producing game shows like Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy became 5-day-a-week programs in prime access, and again, Entertainment Tonight. So they changed the paradigm of how programs were produced, original production, and they were charging license fees for those episodes, and then eventually holding national advertising time because they had enough clearances to generate a competitive scenario with the networks who were to buy national advertising time. So we had a big chunk of revenue from license fees. We had a big chunk of revenue coming from advertising time that we sold in our shows. It became a big business. And on top of that, what Paramount did was that they saw that there was what they used to call like a good old boy network, where the sales reps from the studios would go to local stations who were airing a lot of their programs, and a lot of the shows were sold on like a commission basis. So the relationships the sales guys had with the stations would basically they'd take a guy out to dinner, they would sign a deal, and then the guys would collect their commission. It was pretty easy until the studios realized that there was a lot of money being left on the table. That shows like MASH went into syndication that weren't expected to do real well became mega hits.
Major.
And the prices that MASH was being licensed for at local stations was a pittance to what the stations were making in return, because I don't think anybody saw MASH doing 20 ratings on a local station, which meant that the stations paid a song for the show, and they were making hundreds of millions of dollars on the show and advertising time that they were selling. And Paramount said, you know what, this practice is going to stop. You know what, we want a piece of that pie. And that's when research became very valuable to the distribution equation, because we had a show coming out called Happy Days, and then followed by Taxi and Mork and Mindy and Laverne and Shirley and all these big shows that were coming off the networks. And we had seen that Fox had really not taken advantage of the power of MASH. They didn't really know that the show was going to be that powerful. But once we saw that, we tried to come up with a way to make our shows. We basically hitched our wagon to the MASH performance. We said on the network, these shows did equally as well, if not better than MASH in many categories. And we started doing our homework. We started looking at the ratings. We started looking at the cost per points, and we started to realize that the amount of money that stations were making, we could legitimately go in and ask for a bigger piece of that pie, and basically tell them, based on our research, we know that these shows are going to perform similar to MASH, and that you're going to make this much money. And it scared the bejesus out of the station community, because they knew that their little game was over, and that the world was a-changing, because now research was becoming part of the equation to predict ratings and do revenue analysis.
And what year approximately was this?
It was 1981. Actually, probably the late 1979, 80, 81 was when this transition started.
That was a seismic shift, wasn't it?
It was a seismic shift. And so all of a sudden, the sitcom kind of became the crown jewel in the studio's library, especially if you had a hit sitcom, and especially if you could find ways to tie your performance to the performance of shows that went before you and were successful. And so Taxi had the same profile as MASH, so we sold off of that. And Happy Days had the same profile. Laverne and Shirley had the same profile as Happy Days, because it followed it on the network. So the two audience, so our sales pitch was, you have Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, you have a chance to now recreate the whole ABC #1 primetime lineup on your station. And so the whole marketing approach changed, the whole sales approach changed, and syndication went crazy. And so what started to happen was that the other studios and the other companies that had big sitcoms started, and first run programming, started plucking people out of our department. And I got a call from a company called Telepictures. And in November of 1981, I left Paramount and I became the director of research at Telepictures. And the funny thing was, the first show that Telepictures had picked up from an off-network point of view was a show called Real People. They didn't have any sitcoms at that time. And Real People was a show when I was at Paramount, and George Schlatter Productions came to Paramount. They were an independent producer, and they were looking for a distributor. and they asked me to analyze real people. I looked at this thing and I said, the demographics are way off. They're not even close to the kind of demographics that Taxi, Mork and Mindy, these other off-network shows have. It's not the right fit for the day part. It's going to fail miserably. And so we passed on it at Paramount. And literally 2 weeks later, I start my job at Telepictures, and they come in and they say, we just landed George Schlotter's Real People. Now we have to sell it. And I went, oh my God. So I still had all the data on Real People. And how am I going to turn this program that I know is going to be a complete failure? How do we market it and help Telepictures? It's their big crown jewel now. How are they going to sell it? And I worked some research magic on the numbers and made certain things fit and created a nice sales pitch around it. It wasn't really a great research pitch, but it was enough research and enough schmaltzy sales to get this thing sold, and with significant dollars for the company. Of course, the show premiered and was an immediate failure. I don't think it did more than a rating point in any market. It was,
oh my goodness,
year, and the stations were on the hook with this thing for a couple of years because they do these 5 and 6 year deals, and they were stuck with it. But we did the job we needed to do. But 2 other shows that Telepictures had were groundbreaking. One was The People's Court, and one was Connection. And so I had to report on those every day when the ratings would come in. How's the show doing? And my job was to look at the trends and look at the ratings performance and see if we could upgrade the time periods from the daytime into the prime access block in the afternoon or even in late night, because the cost per points were higher and stations could make more money and we could make more revenue in the advertising that we held in those shows. So it behooved us to make sure that we were on top of these shows. And I was this young research person, and I was really trying to earn my stripes and earning credibility with management and telling the truth about these shows. And
they need to have a baseball game. That's all you need.
all my baseball principles, these principles, which I thought were just things that my coach was yelling at me for, were all the principles that helped us actually win a championship in baseball, and actually helped me in my career in establishing credibility and helping create a winning profile for our company. Because the People's Court went on to become a success, and I shepherded that. It was like my baby. I watched that thing grow. And then we had Love Connection, and we were able to build that into a hit. And
so
then
we could stop there. So did you help to inform how they would market it, or how they would create the new shows, or the direction, trajectory?
Right. So not only did we just work with Nielsen data to track performance, but we actually did primary research and did a lot of surveys, and actually went back to my old stomping grounds at ASI Market Research and tested the program in-house with surveys and focus groups. And we learned a lot, especially with the People's Court. Stu Billett was the producer of the People's Court, and as it turned out, his daughter ended up becoming my daughter-in-law.
Wow.
Which is a great story. But Stu knew what worked in the People's Court, and he had a really good sense of what audiences wanted in this show. He made a great choice, and Judge Wapner is the judge. And the show went on in the afternoon. It was working great. And then I noticed the trend where it was beating MASH in the afternoon wherever it went. And we were able to use the daytime performance of People's Court against MASH in the daytime to upgrade it into the prime access time period for stations, where it competed even more broadly against MASH, and it still did great. And so,
and even made the movie with Tom Cruise, 10 Minutes to Wapner.
Absolutely. And that's what it was like. It was crazy. It was like this phenomena that was just going gangbusters. Okay.
Yeah.
And Stu just, we'd say, Stu, we should probably do some research on the market, and we should do some research. He said, no. The show's working. I know what works best. It's my sense that we just got to leave it alone, and we'll be fine. And here I am. I'm trying to earn my credibility by making suggestions that are going to help the show. I'm already kind of on a roll doing that with a lot of the other shows that we had, and I'm still, trying to truth to power. And okay, so we back off of Stu. But what happened was, People's Court hit a wall in this prime access time period. And we saw, and most shows take about 4 years to grow and then they start to fall off. It's a natural evolution decline. Okay. So People's Court was one of those rare exceptions where it worked here and it worked here and it was still going, and then it started to come down. It started to fall off the cliff. And we said, Stu, the show is having trouble, and he said, we got to do research. And so he said, okay, let's do some focus groups. Let's do some testing. Let's find out what the problem is. Well,
can I kind of interject something? Do you have places like San Antonio has so many bases, naval, army, all kinds of different military bases. People from around the country are there. Are those the kind of places you would test market? Because we would
go all over the country. We did a lot of work in Dallas. We did a lot of work in Houston. We went to Winston-Salem. We went to Springfield.
Physically, you'd be there.
Physically, we'd go to these places and we'd listen. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'd come with us or not, but we would go all over the country. And we wanted to really understand what was going on with the People's Court. And so we talked to people that were former viewers that stopped watching the show altogether. We talked to people who were watching the show, but not as much. Mm-hmm. And then we were talking to the true fans. And again, what came through loud and clear was that they started not to believe that the show was real, that they started to believe, the audiences started to believe the show was made up, that the cases were scripted and nothing was, even though Stu would have a team that would be at the courthouses pulling cases and then asking these people to come on the show, the audiences thought, you know what, some of these cases are so outrageous, they can't be real, it's got to be scripted. And they stopped watching the show. They just said, we're done.
Wow.
And we said to Stu, we've got to find a way to market the show, what we should do. And he said, I know what you're thinking. We're not going to use Judge Wapner. We're not going to compromise Judge Wapner as a marketing tool for the show. We can't do that to the judge. I said, I understand that, but let's just, for the sake of appeasement here, let's just do some with him. We came up with music videos. We came up with dramatic scenes from the show. We came up with funny scenes from the show. And then Stu sat down with Judge Wapner and filmed him talking about the show. And what Wapner came up with was that, I'm Judge Wapner, I'm the judge in the People's Court, and I just want you to know that, sometimes these cases, they can be funny and they can be dramatic, but they're all real. I mean, we're taking them from the court, and he basically said they're absolutely undeniable.
Straight from the judge.
Absolutely. But so we had these commercials, so we went back and we tested all the commercials. And which is the ones that you think tested the best? Not the music video, not the dramatic ones, not the funny ones, the ones with Judge Wapner speaking.
Looking in the camera.
Right. And then all the focus groups that we did with the no longer viewers, the sometimes viewers, and the loyal viewers, they all said the same thing. It's great that you have Judge Wapner doing that, but he has no credibility. So what do you mean he has no credibility? He's the judge. Well, he did this commercial in a suit. Judge doesn't wear a suit. Judge wears a robe. He's got to be in a robe.
Goodness.
Okay, we put Judge Wapner in his robes. We reshot the spots. The commercials went through the roof. The whole campaign became Judge Wapner talking about the show and over, kind of a voiceover of him, with the litigants and with some of the cases, and then he would say, and then the voice would come on and would say, the People's Court, absolutely, undeniably real. And you'd see Wapner with his hammer the gavel coming, boom. And the show, I kid you not, I've never seen such a turnaround. The show came back and it held strong, and it continued to go for another couple of years before it finally started to wear out. But even in wear out, other court shows were developed, and stations were creating court show blocks. And the People's Court was still the dean of the court show. So even though the ratings weren't as strong, it was going to some independent stations that, were the kind of license fees that we were getting and the kind of ratings that was generated made a court show block in the afternoon a viable block.
Wow.
And I just loved it. That's the kind of stuff that made it great. You were talking about the syndicator indicator and the emotional index. So the syndicator indicator, what basically happened.
Was that something you thought of?
Well, actually, I stole it from Paramount. Because, and the reason that it worked for me when I did it, because we had enough data to really go back and make a sound case. And it worked great until it didn't work. And what I mean by that is when we were trying to sell Taxi off of MASH and Happy Days off of MASH and Laverne and Shirley, we were basically saying that, you need the right demos to succeed in syndication. And we tried to create this thing that was labeled the syndicator indicator. But the numbers that we had were too inconsistent going back and forth. And we didn't have enough of a track record of other sitcoms that went from the network into syndication. So we could track a syndication success, a sitcom success over a period of time to see what happened. So we like to see a top-rated show go into syndication, and if it's being licensed for 5 or 6 years, we'd like to see it stay at the top of the ratings for that period of time. But we didn't have enough information to track like that, so we just had inconsistent data. And if we went to present it to a local station, they could say, "Yeah, you're full of garbage," because I can show you 3 other shows that were hits that didn't have the numbers. And so, nice try, fellas, but it's not going to happen. Go to 1987, and we have this show called ALF. Okay, we had Paul Fusco allowed us to syndicate his show, and it was really just right at the time that we were merging, that Lorimar Telepictures, the Telepictures had been bought by Lorimar, became Lorimar Telepictures, and so we segued into that, and then it was right on the precipice of Warner Brothers coming in and taking Lorimar Telepictures. So we were the same company with just different names. We kept merging with all these companies. But we had ALF. And ALF was labeled as this gimmick show. It's actually a fad show, not a gimmick show, because there's a big difference between a gimmick show and a fad show. But it was a fad. It was like the hula hoop. It was just a one-trick pony. It's just this puppet that's, has an attitude, and he's a smart aleck, and that's, it's really cool, but it's going to wear out quickly. It's not going to work. Well, ALF was a big hit on the network. And what we were able to show, because we had enough data at that time, we could go back 10 years now, from 1977 through 1987. We had a base, and we had shows like MASH and Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley and the Jeffersons and all these shows that went into syndication and were top-rated shows. They were all in the top 5, and they were there for 5 years. And what did all these shows that stayed in the top 5 have in common? And then what did the ones that didn't stay in the top 5, why did they fall out? Or why did these other shows that were hit shows on the network not even make it into the top of the rankings? And at that point, we had enough data to show it was clear. The difference was clearly in the demos. So you could have a show like Golden Girls, which was competing against ALF, both 30 share shows on the network, both number 1 in their time periods, but for completely different reasons. And so we were able to create data charts with all the shows that were hits and what they had in common. It was all young men, it was all young women, teens, and kids. But the difference in the demos was that these shows had an audience of young men. Very hard to get young men into the day part. So all these shows had the young men element. The other ones didn't. They were all too heavily female and no teens, no kids, and very old. And the day part that these shows were commanding the big dollars from were all young day parts. So it was rough. I mean, Golden Girls spent a year at in the top 5 and then quickly dropped out. Why? Because it didn't have the legs, because it didn't have the demographics. So the syndicator indicator became like this thing, and it worked with all the shows that followed ALF. As we got into the Warner Brothers shows, were Growing Pains and Step by Step and Family Matters with Urkel and the Hogan Family that had Valerie Harper in it. We sold those things like crazy based on the syndicator indicator, and it worked until it didn't work, which meant that none of those shows made it to the top 5, and none of them lasted 5 years. So the whole theory of the syndicator indicator kind of went away, but it achieved our goal, and I remember seeing some of the management team at Paramount who was still there when I was there, and they said, kudos to you. You were able to make that thing that we couldn't make work. You made it work, and you did it really successfully. And that felt really good coming from my former company.
Oh, but no BS there. They'll tell you exactly what they're thinking. To say that is amazing.
But once Warner Brothers took over, because we had Miller Boyett Productions, which was the staple of Paramount with all those shows, Happy Days, Gary Marshall, He was part of Tom Miller, Bob Boyette. These guys were prolific sitcom guys. They did Bosom Buddies, they did Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, all those great shows that were all #1 on ABC for years. And they came over to Warner Brothers, and so they were expected to deliver. And we had the merger with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers was expecting big things and big license fees from all the shows that were coming down the pike. We had Friends, which we were able to sell, and that did really well. And then we had 2.5 Men, and people were even giving us a problem about 2.5 Men. The guy that became the head of sales at Warner Brothers questioned whether 2.5 Men could work. And the funny thing was, this is a very interesting story. And tell me what you think here. I said to him, "So you don't think 2.5 Men is going to go onto syndication and be a major hit?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, what's a big major hit to you? What's a show that you consider a hit?" He said, "You remember the old Andy Griffith show? That I consider a major hit." I said, "Really?"
Gilligan's Island.
I said, "So tell me, what's the difference between Andy Griffith and 2.5 Men?" He looked at me and said, "Are you out of your mind? I mean, we're talking about a show created in the 60s in North Carolina and a show in the new millennium that's, kind of edgy, and it's in Malibu." I said, "Well, you don't see Charlie as Andy? You don't see Alan as Barney, the neurotic sidekick? You don't see the son, I forgot the son's name in the show. You don't see him as Opie, and you don't see Gerda the maid as Aunt Bee. It's the same show. It's the same structure. It's just now we're in 2000s versus in Malibu, but it's the same, and the chemistry is working." Jake was the name of the son. So you had Jake was Opie, and Alan was Barney, and Charlie was Andy, and Gerda was Aunt Bee. It's the same show. And you go, "Oh, okay." These are guys. This is the kind of thing but you have to be able to get them to see the light. Anyway, our sales. I had to give a seminar in that for our sales guys when they ran up against it, and when they went out into the local stations to say, because a lot of these guys would be in the South and up, in North Carolina, and they'd come up against stuff like that. "Well, we got the Andy Griffith show." "Well, yeah. Well, we got 2.5 Men. It's the same show." And then they would take them through my logic. And we got this result. I mean, people are still watching the show to this day. I mean, but the head of sales, again, we never really saw eye to eye on sitcoms because I don't think he really understood what he was selling and the power of it. But we had this show called Big Bang Theory. And this was a show he kept saying.
But 2 minutes left, by the way.
Okay, this is a gimmick show. Never going to work. Well, sure, it's going to work. A gimmick is just a gimmick. If you look up the word gimmick in the dictionary, it just means it's an entree into something. It's something designed to bring you in, and then the writing and the acting and everything else has to keep you there. So this show we tracked, and it was succeeding everywhere, and everywhere it went, it was growing and growing and growing. And we had enough data to take a look at the number of episodes people watched, if they would make every effort to find these episodes, and so there was 3 variables on engaging an audience that came together. In the index, basically, the emotional bond index showed that the emotional attachment that a viewer had to Big Bang Theory was so strong that there was no denying that people were going to crawl over hot coals to find this thing wherever it aired. The index on this thing was over 200. Its closest competitor at the time, Modern Family, another great show, had half that emotional index. So people weren't really, going to go out of their way for Modern Family, but they sure as heck were going to go out of their way for Big Bang Theory. And we turned that perception of it just being a flash in the pan to a show that became a huge hit, not only in the network, but in syndication, generated record license fee dollars, and the syndication revenue from that show was bigger than any other division of the company that year. And on top of that, it's still playing. I went on a trip to London about 2 years ago, and I binged on 20 episodes going to London and the same 20 coming back, because there's something different in each episode. It's so well written and so well acted. I understood it. I understood that bond that people had, that couldn't miss the show. And it's a rarity because no other show had an index over 200 like this one did.
Wow.
So,
well, Bruce, We got to bring this plane in for landing. It is such a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you so much. I have so many questions gurgling around, ricocheting around my head right now, but we gotta go.
Well, we'll do it again. I mean, I've got
Yes.
I've got 4 children too, and I've got 8 grandchildren, and it's unbelievable. I see we got a question that just came up.
Yeah, it's too late. I'm sorry, Ken Ferguson. We're all over. We're all done.
Yes, the answer to the question that came up is yes.
Yes. Okay. Ken,
Yeah.
you got your question in, and you got it answered.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Ken. I'll tell you more about it.
Yeah, you catch him on LinkedIn and reach out to Bruce, please. And thanks again for coming on with us. And we will do this again because there are just so many other directions we could go with this.
Joel, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you giving me the platform to speak up. And again, it was an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You have just experienced another episode of the Mischief Maker broadcast. Hit the subscribe button. Connect at chiefmischiefmaker.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride. And hopefully, you are now a bit closer to becoming a mischief maker in your part of the world.